I'm Brad DeRoche. Welcome back. Today's day 3 of 30 days of guitar technique, 30 short lessons in guitar technique. And today the focus is going to be on right and left hand positioning. What I want you to keep in mind in today's lesson is centering, all right? Centering and avoiding extremes. So when we look at how to position our hands, our right and our left hand on the instruments, we're trying to find a center, and that center is in the mid-range of motion or movement between the possible extremes of flexion and extension. Let me give you an example. If we look at my right wrist here, this is in the center of its possible movement, and here would be extreme extension, here's extreme flexion. So what I need to do between these two extremes here is to find the center point and try to use that as the place that I always come back to or stay in as much as possible. So when I'm playing, I want to make sure I avoid extremes of keeping my wrist really high like this or really low or extended, for instance. So it's somewhere in the middle when I play. So the mid-range of motion is a fundamental principle that you want to keep in mind when you're positioning your body and your hands around the instrument. So our focus today is on centering. So find the center of the mid-range, if you will, of the possible range of motion or movement of muscles, joints, and tendons. And if you stay within the center most of the time, you'll probably end up avoiding most injuries that guitarists tend to get. Okay, so now let's talk about the right hand. When we bring the right hand, right arm, over the top of the guitar, if you position the guitar well, this part of the instrument should serve as a shelf to hold the weight of the forearm. I like to position the side curve of the guitar here, the corner if you would, of the guitar, to be at 2/3 of the way between my wrist and my elbow. So we can think of those things like the golden ratio, or just think 2/3. And somewhere 2/3 from the distance between my wrist and my elbow will be the thickest part of the forearm. And if you can put the thickest part of your forearm right on the widest part of the lower bout, it should be about straight across from the bridge. That should be a place where you can rest the weight of your arm. And so you shouldn't have to keep your arm held up with muscle power from your shoulder, and it shouldn't slip off the side. So one of the things that many people do wrong here is they tend to either be too far away from that 2/3 point, so they're way up here, or they bring the elbow up above the guitar. So, or down here. There's another thing that happens a lot. People tend to slide the arm off of this widest part, so it's no longer really resting on the shelf anymore. It's sliding off the side. So if you position the instrument properly, look at video number 2 for that. You should be able to use the guitar as a shelf to rest the weight of your forearm. And you put it at that 2/3 point. That'll give you a nice place to rest the right arm. Then when it comes to positioning the hand, I want to make sure with positioning that in a very natural curved position of my fingers, like so, that my thumb is on the bass side, obviously, and then fingers 1, 2, and 3, or let's use guitar terminology here, A, M, I position those on the top 3 strings. So the A, the ring finger, is on the 1st string, 2nd and 3rd string, like so. If you do that, you should find that your wrist is in alignment here with the forearm, so it's not tilted down or up like this. This is kind of an old school approach that some people used to do. They would tilt the wrist this way. I think that's really bad for the health of our joints and tendons, so I would not recommend doing that at all. I would keep it in alignment with the forearm. Also, it's in alignment this way. It's in the mid-range of its motion. All right, so if it's centered this way and this way, you should find your thumb is on the bass strings, 1, 2, and 3 here, and the knuckles, this big knuckle here, is over top, directly over the top of the string that it is playing. So this knuckle, the ring finger knuckle, should be directly over the 1st string, which in this case it should be. Middle finger knuckle is directly over the 2nd string, and index finger knuckle is directly over the 3rd string. So when my fingers are curved, my hand is in this position here, like this. It looks like I have a little bit of arch in the wrist, but it's actually not. It's pretty flat this way. All right, so there's the hand position from the side. Here it is in alignment here, and knuckles are over top of the strings here. That's the right hand. Now, for the left hand, when we bring our hand up to the guitar neck with a good position, all we should have to do is bend at the elbow, and the guitar should be right. I mean, we're going to run right into the middle of the neck. The thumb should be positioned behind the neck, somewhere in the center. And I've seen a lot of people in books and other things say that the thumb should be positioned between the first and second finger, or sometimes across from the second finger, middle finger. And to me, this doesn't make a lot of sense, because if we do that, we're really flexing that big muscle in the thumb to bring it inward. I would recommend a very natural hand position like this. So when you bring the hand up, it's natural. It just connects right with the neck here. So all you're doing is basically bending at the elbow. Now, the biggest problem most people have in the left hand, and you want to watch for this, is that if your guitar neck gets kind of low like this, if you have a low angle, most people, when they go to play the bass notes, they end up bending the wrists really severely to get to the bass strings, to reach them. So we want to really watch that. So do not do that. Instead, bring the guitar neck at a slightly higher angle, and you'll have a hard time bending your wrist just to play like that. It'll feel very uncomfortable. It'll be much more natural to keep your wrist straight. So that, again, people usually that do bend their wrist a lot when they play, it's because the guitar angle, the neck angle, is too low. So we want to avoid that. So basic hand positioning is about keeping your center and avoiding extremes. Those are the two things you want to look out for today. And for the right hand, positioning the knuckles over top of the strings that finger is playing, like so, helps to keep us in alignment. And for the left hand, keeping the thumb just in its natural position behind the neck. So when you come up here, just keep your fingers slightly open, and that hand position should work out pretty well for most things. All right, so avoid extremes and keep your center. That's the lesson of the day, right and left hand position. We'll talk more about some finer details when we get to each hand and the technique of the right hand and the left hand. All right, so stay tuned. I'll see you in the next lesson, and happy practicing.